Hello, everyone. Welcome to Twisted Truths. I'm sure today's episode is going to be a super interesting one. I have with me Sourav. He is an advocate at the Honorable High Court in Calcutta. And we'll be talking about everything law, everything legal, and also a few bits and pieces of the general information that we as general public often wish to seek, want to seek, but cannot seek. So with that, I would want to welcome Sourav to our show. Hi Sourav, how are you and how are you feeling? And we are meeting after a long time.
Oh yes, it's a wonderful feeling. I thank you for calling me to this interview or a conversation. Let's put it that way. Thank you very much. It's very good to see you after a long time. I'm doing fine. Thank you. So let's get talking.
It's always good to, meet your old college batchmates, buddies and all of that. And
absolutely. Brings back a lot of memories.
Absolutely.
Of our wonderful college days. It's right next door.
Yeah.
From the place where we are shooting.
My first question and this is due to our college influence. And I remember you studying BCom.
Yes.
And you were also a very involved musician back in college.
Yes.
So were you very sure back then that you would be becoming an advocate, or this was something which happened by chance?
I would not say by chance. It was definitely there at the back of my mind. To be very honest with you, I have always had a soft corner towards English, right? So once you are enrolled in BCom, English kind of goes out of the window.
Right.
At least there's no, how should I put it?
It takes a backseat.
Yeah. So it's not really the core competence area which is necessary. So I decided that why not try law? Because it still has something to do with the language. You need to read a lot. And if you go into old judgments, they are beautifully written judgments. And so that way you can remain close to the language you love. At the same time, you can venture into the field which you've taken your specialization in.
Right.
So my BCom subsequently, now today at this point of time, I specialize in the field of taxation and constitutional law. So tax is something which, again, I learned back in my college days.
Right.
So that helps. At the same time, I can still remain close to English. And, the perks of being in this profession is that you have to read a lot. Anything that you come across, you'll have to read. And the beauty of it is that you have to go in the depth of it. So these things are something which I have really been fascinated by. And like you mentioned, my tryst with music.
Yes.
So I would say that Indian classical music and me being a student of this great form of art, that has also influenced or helped me in my profession. Because
how do you say that?
Because it develops a lot of patience. I have a funny story to share, if you allow me to.
Please.
When I was in school, I picked up sitar at the age of 11, 12 maybe.
And before you continue the story, when you say picked up, was it something that it came naturally to you, or did your parents tell you ki sitar is the thing which
I come from a family which has been very entrenched with, deeply intrinsically associated with music. Although we don't have professional musicians in the family, but music is something which is very close to all of us.
Right.
So my grandmother, she was an avid music lover. She was obsessed with Hemanta Mukherjee's songs, and she was obsessed with Rabindranath. In my maternal side, my maternal grandfather, he was a brilliant pianist. He used to play the sitar. And Indian classical music has been something which has been there with me throughout my childhood. So subconsciously, that is what I've heard.
Right.
in my side of the family, in my paternal side, I come from a family which is patronized Podavoli Kirtan.
Right.
So I've grown up hearing the song of the soil, so to speak. Therefore, music has been natural that way. There's no doubt in it. But in our school, we were required to pick up subjects.
Okay.
So one of these subjects was music, sitar. So I picked up that instrument. And ever since that, it has been a wonderful journey, because the deeper you go into it, you realize that how little you are.
Mm-hmm.
And there's so much to learn.
Absolutely.
Much like, and I believe that it's true for all professions. If you get deep into it, you know that you have a long way to go.
Correct.
And where it ends, nobody knows.
Absolutely right.
So I've been in practice for the last 6 years as a lawyer. Even today, when I go to court, when I step inside the courtroom, I realize how little I know. So the moment you have this realization that you have a lot to learn, then, it aids in your growth, so to speak. But coming back to the story, sitar, when I started learning, I remember that my teacher taught me how to play Saregama Padhanisa, Sanidha Magaresa, and the entire thing took me 1 year.
Okay.
That is all that I was doing.
And that's the first thing we generally learn.
That's what we learn. And then you learn some paltas, some combination of notes. Only those combinations were what I did for 1 year.
Okay.
By then, my batchmates, my classmates who had picked up guitar, they were playing chords, they were playing songs. So they had grown as a musician. And I got very bored. In the second year, again, there was something else. I played for that one whole year, doing practice, rigorous practice of various combination of notes. And then in the third year, I learned one raga for whole 1 year.
Right.
Okay, that is what was taught. That is the style usually. So after 3 years, I realized that what I know is only one raga. Okay. And while my friends were actually performing on stage, singing, doing this, doing that. But then because of that tenacity and the fact that I could overcome that period, that gestation period, once you get into exploration of these notes, once you see that there's an ocean and you start creating on stage, because Indian classical music is not about fixed compositions. Like you have, say, somebody who is specialized into Bollywood songs, so performs songs, so to speak, whether it is Bollywood or any other form.
Or any other language, yeah.
Those are fixed compositions. With Indian classical music, you have ragas. You have fixed compositions on the basis of which you will have to improvise.
Right.
So there's freedom within a certain discipline, so to speak. Not unqualified freedom. It comes with certain, restrictions. But there's freedom nonetheless. So if I'm to play Yaman today, that will be very distinctly different from the Yaman that I played 5 years back.
Right.
Or maybe the Yaman which I'm going to play tomorrow.
Right.
Because it's on-stage creativity. So these things
there's no fixed pattern.
There's no fixed pattern, nothing.
Right.
So, and when you're getting up on stage, all you are carrying with you is the practice that you have put in and the fixed composition which you're going to play. Other than that, there's nothing fixed. So you're creating on stage. And these things really, I have seen, has helped me in my life, in my profession. Because when you have unqualified freedom, there is more propensity to go haywire. But when you are already accustomed to freedom, but within certain restrictions or disciplines, perhaps the spirit of the Constitution, if I am to speak in the language of law, like you promised your viewers at the outset, freedom of speech and expression is something which we speak about, right? Article 19 of the Constitution of India. But what is overlooked is the second part of this freedom. That becomes a qualified freedom. They say that you have freedom of speech and expression, but that is subject to reasonable restrictions.
Right.
So again,
obviously, yes.
So, and that spirit possibly is something which I have had in me because of classical music. So it's been very easy to, kind of get there. So I hope I've been able to answer your
Absolutely.
pretty long answer.
But that's okay.
That's okay.
You're an advocate. Now with this, my next question is, what is the difference between a lawyer, advocate, and a barrister?
Well, a lawyer is somebody who has a law degree. Okay. An advocate is somebody who practices in a court of law.
Okay.
You can practice once you are registered with the Bar Council, whichever state you are practicing, and then you will have to appear for the All India Bar Examination. This rule has recently come in. So this is after a specific date. So once you qualify in that examination, you will be given a COP and you are eligible to practice. That is who an advocate is.
Right.
However, there is no legal basis of what I'm saying.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, these are, I would say, conventionally, this is what is believed.
Right.
But what is interesting is, you've asked about barrister.
Yes.
Now, there are 4 inns.
Okay.
4 inns of court in London, in England. Let's put it that way. I think Lincoln's Inn, there are 3 others. Gray's Inn, there are a couple of more. So there are 4 inns. You are called to the bar by these 4 inns.
Okay.
You get your law degree from there, and then you are called a barrister at law, bar at law. Okay. Now, earlier, again, in our country, you have this unique thing where once you get a certification from abroad, you become a great person. So, Satyajit Ray got the Bharat Ratna after he got the Oscar.
Right.
For lifetime achievement. So this has been a practice. Same with Rabindranath.
I think that's the norm,
That's the norm.
If you're studying here in a very good university, that's okay. But you're studying in a very average university from outside.
Mm-hmm.
Suddenly you'll be there on the pedestal.
Yeah. So that is there. I'm not very sure about the Satyajit Ray example. Whether he got it after Oscar or before that. But Rabindranath, I'm pretty certain that once he got the Nobel Prize, he was just another level altogether.
Right.
But of course, he was politically, socially, philosophically very relevant and very prominent. But possibly that prominence changed.
Right.
Again, we dissuaded. So 1961, the Advocates Act comes in. That has 2 categories of advocates. One is advocates, the other is senior advocate.
Okay.
Okay, there's nothing else. So, barristers per se are at the same pedestal as advocates.
Okay.
There's no difference. So, somebody who has got his degree from these 4 inns and they have been called to the bar, they are barristers.
Right.
Now, senior advocate is something which is very interesting in our profession. Before I joined the profession, and as you know that I have nobody who is a lawyer in my family.
Right.
There's nobody. I'm a first generation lawyer. So many things I learned which I wasn't aware of. So senior advocate is somebody who is designated by a High Court or the Supreme Court.
Okay.
Seniority doesn't come with age, so to speak, or a few strands of grey hair.
Right.
Doesn't make you a senior advocate. Yes, you may be a senior professional. That's true. But
the designation.
But the designation is something which is conferred upon you, which is given to you by a High Court or by the Supreme Court. There are laid down procedures for it. But only when you have that designation, you can be called a senior advocate. Right. So I think these are loose terms which people are unaware of.
So, but broadly, if I have to summarize, then advocate and barrister more or less on the same thing.
Just that a barrister writes bar at law after his name.
Okay.
And we can't do that.
Right.
So if I am a lawyer practicing at the High Court, I would state my name as Sourav Chunder, advocate, the Honorable High Court at Calcutta. Right. But somebody who's a barrister, say his name is XYZ, this would be followed by bar at law.
Okay.
And then you put in your principal area of practice or court of practice. That's how it is.
And we often hear in the media, that these are the number of cases that are pending in the High Court, in the Supreme Court, in the lower courts.
Correct. Tariq pe tariq.
Tariq pe tariq and all of that. So, how true is that?
It is true. Unfortunately, it is very true. But, the misconception is that you blame lawyers or judges for it.
Correct. That's the misconception. Yes.
Obviously, we'll do that. From the outside, that is what it seems.
Yeah.
But the system is overworked. And there are so many vacancies that I can't begin to tell you. In these high courts, there's a certain sanctioned strength.
Right.
On a good day, you only have 50% judges.
On a good day.
So at this point of time, I think we have 42 or 44 judges in the Calcutta High Court. The sanctioned strength is 72. So you have 30 odd vacancies.
And why is there this
vacancy? Judicial appointments take time. The government has to appoint lawyers. Recommendations go from the collegium.
Okay.
Right? But these appointments take a lot of time. Governments don't want to fulfill this entire vacancy. I don't know why. Or maybe the process itself takes long. But if we would have been operating on 100% optimum level, then this pendency would come down drastically. Because you have judges who sit at 10:30 sharp, who rise at 4:30, sometimes matters even go on till 4:45, 5, beyond court hours. So judges and lawyers, they put in their best efforts to ensure that there is no inordinate delay. But if you don't have enough number of judges, what will you do? The amount of vacancy in district courts is appalling. It's unbelievable. I have a personal matter which pertains to my own this thing. That matter was first being heard by a certain judge. This judge got transferred.
Okay.
Ever since that, for the last 6 months or so, the bench has not been fulfilled. So the matter has not been heard.
Obviously.
What do you do about it? I mean, you can't hold... See, we have... In this particular matter I'm talking about, I have somebody who is an advocate who is looking after this matter, who is representing me in the court of law. I can't blame him for that. And I am not blaming him because I am part of the system. I know it. For somebody who is outside this system, will not know why the delay. And then you will abuse the legal system saying that it's so slow. But in Hindi, there's a proverb, "Der hai durust hai."
Correct.
I think that much hope or trust I still have in the judiciary, that even though it comes late, it will be what the law is.
But then there's this saying, justice delayed is justice denied.
True. And I do not have any counter to that. Because honestly, as an advocate myself, or I've seen my senior day in, day out, there is no delay from our side. We try and, the better the disposal rate is, the better it is for us.
Obviously. Correct.
It's load off our shoulders,
right,
so to speak. Because you are taking the responsibility of a person who has come to you for help.
Right.
So the quicker we can give him that help is better for us. It's off our tables, off our shoulders. But we try and say there may be a situation where there's a date and I fall ill. I can't do anything about it.
Correct.
So on these exceptional situations, we will ask for time. But other than that, when a matter is taken up, our first effort is to do the matter and get it over with. There are judges who will not even take 5 minutes to understand the matter.
Okay.
And the faster they get rid of it, the happier they are.
Right. Obviously. Yeah.
It happens.
Yeah.
And for example, I can name a judge I had the great fortune of seeing, Justice Shwanjit Banerjee.
Okay.
He would dispose of matters so fast. You would just hear them. No nonsense judge. He would hear you. He's convinced, he's not convinced, he'll dispose of the matter. Done. So that's how it is.
So what do you think is the only solution, like apart from fulfilling the vacant spots? Is there any solution otherwise, or this is like the only solution?
Increase the number of judges. And trust me, if we have adequate judges in the system, this pendency will go down.
Right.
And one effort which all of us do take, and we must consciously take that effort, is that we should not be wasting the time of the court. Right? So,
how does one, adhere to that?
By not seeking unnecessary adjournments.
Okay.
Or say, see, at times what happens is we do not file matters on time. We file, a client has come to me, they've asked me to file a matter. I unnecessarily delayed the whole thing. And then I file it with a Section 5 application, a condonation of delay application. And I file it before the court. So by default, there is a 6-month delay. So these unnecessary things, if we can avoid, and which advocates try their level best to avoid, if we can do away with these things, and we have adequate number of judges in the system, pendency will not be a problem.
Right. So there's this thing which I had heard that advocates, not even counting the judges, but the advocates, they can't promote their services that come to me.
No, you can't.
And why is that?
There's a restriction within the Advocates Act, within the Bar Council rules. No professional can do that. Just so you know.
Really?
Yes. No professionals can solicit work or advertise.
Okay.
It is not allowed by these professional bodies. I can speak for the CA Institute, Institute of Chartered Accountants. So CAs can't advertise. Now, the question is, how do you get work? For this, we have a system. There are solicitors who will brief counsels in matters and they will take it forward. But no untoward advertisement. So popularity or limelight is something that we have to surrender when we step into this profession. That's a basic requisite of this profession.
Right.
The way people know you is by virtue of your work. That's your only identity.
So basically word of mouth. That's
word of mouth? Word of mouth, yes.
But you're allowed to speak to the media in case of a trial or something. That is something that is allowed.
Of course, because who else would speak to the media insofar as legal matters is concerned?
That's right.
You will have to know the law too.
Correct.
And that's another unfortunate situation which we have. The lack of legal knowledge in the media. Not all, but in most cases, people who do not cover. See, you will have specialized correspondents.
Exactly.
Who
Covering
would cover
every beat.
legal matters.
Yes, absolutely.
You do not have just somebody who is covering any other matter, say sports, a sports journalist or a political
journalist
writer.
Or whatever it is. Yeah, absolutely.
A pastry journalist. You not. It's a specialized field which requires specialized knowledge. And therefore, you require media briefings to be by specialized individuals who know the subject. That's how it is.
Right. So, so you've been practicing for quite a few years now.
6
years.
6 years.
So, tell us one case which has been really memorable. It can be both a positive memory or a negative memory.
Well,
that really left a mark.
See, in the initial years, you are usually assisting your senior in the matter.
Right.
But very recently, there was this matter which came up before the High Court. And there was a Swiss national. Okay. This Swiss national was adopted from India, from an adoption agency in 1988.
Okay.
If I'm not mistaken, because this was a few months back. I think half a year back. So this Swiss national is now about 35. Okay. He's now a full-fledged adult who is earning his own bread. Now he wanted to trace his biological roots.
Okay. Interesting. Yeah.
So he came back, through somebody, he came back to India. He went into that place from where he was adopted.
Right.
He inquired, and the adoption agency said that, no, we can't give you the details because explicitly there is a clause which states that the privacy of the biological mother shall not be disclosed. That is intact.
Right.
The identity of the biological mother will not be disclosed.
Right.
So this was not a very satisfactory answer.
Mm.
So this gentleman, he filed a writ petition before the Calcutta High Court through a constituted attorney. Now, I was for the adoption agency. Okay. So I was defending the privacy of the biological mother.
Right.
And we argued that one right cannot be at the expense of another right. So the child definitely has the right to know, but the mother also has an equivalent right to her privacy. Because today, if you open up these wounds, it's not so easy to surrender somebody's child.
Obviously, yeah.
Okay, it's a terrible thing. You've given birth, whatever may have been the circumstances, you've given birth to a child, and a mother would want to hold on to that child. It takes a lot to surrender that child. So once that surrendering has been done and the mother has moved on, who knows where she is today? She may be leading a happy family life somewhere else, having completely hidden the past.
Absolutely.
Right?
Absolutely.
So who gives us the right to open up that Pandora's box again or reopen closed wounds? There's no point. So that was our contention. And thankfully, the Calcutta High Court also upheld our argument and held that the right of the child to know or trace his biological roots cannot be at the expense of the right of the biological mother to her privacy.
Right.
So this is a very interesting case which I dealt with and successfully defended the rights of the mother.
What a story. And then what, he went back after that?
He went back. You see, he could have appealed against the order, but that there was no appeal. So I don't know what is the fate of the petitioner because I've never met him. I've only met the advocates who were representing them, and that too in a courtroom. So I don't know what is the fate, but then this was a landmark judgment. It has been reported in several legal journals.
Right.
It's a very interesting case.
And what is the atmosphere of a courtroom? Is it similar to what we see in movies, or is it
no,
completely different from?
Completely different, but for us who love this profession, for us it's a temple. So the moment you step into the courtroom, you feel, particularly if you're a practitioner at the Calcutta High Court, I must tell you that it's a very daunting prospect.
Why so?
You see, you are reminded of the fact that doyens have stepped into those halls, those grand corridors, right? You've had people like, say, even Rajendra Prasad, the Vice President of India. You've had people like, in the current context, Mr. Anindya Mitra or Shokti Babu or my senior, Mr. J.P. Khaitan. These legends, they have walked on those corridors and you have the opportunity to do the same. You're representing a bunch of people who are helpless, who are in dire need of your legal assistance. So the amount of responsibility, and when you enter those courtrooms, you see those great pictures, grand pictures of great jurists, and you have statues of, say, Chandra Madhav Ghosh or Radha Vinod Pal. Those are really daunting on the face of it. You feel very, how should I put it, that weight of legacy, or the weight of the past, you can feel it.
So do you think the way, and I can completely sense it sitting right across to you, that you feel it very deeply, but do you think there are other advocates also who feel as deeply as you do?
See, the parameters of...
I know it's difficult to judge, but
the parameters of these feelings cannot be really judged, and it may vary from person to person. But I would choose to believe that most of us who have voluntarily come into this profession would be overawed by it.
And like we see in the films, do you actually have an audience sitting and hearing?
You do.
So where do these people come from? Are they related to?
They are litigants. They are the ones who are the parties to these matters. Usually, you don't have somebody going into a courtroom like a cricket match.
Like, for example, today I want to see a case. I can't just walk in and sit there.
You can walk in and sit there, but nobody would want to. It
generally does not happen. Yeah.
It doesn't happen that way. But you have petitioners who go there, they watch their own proceedings, they see how their fate is being decided.
Right.
You have law students, interns who are interning with some advocate, or students of law who want to see how courts work. They are present. You have the clerks of the advocates who are. So people connected with law are the ones, but it's public.
Right.
Anybody can go into a courtroom and watch proceedings, but unlike a cricket match, you will not have that situation.
Right. And if I have to ask you that maybe one Hindi film which has more or less shown the court proceedings kind of correctly. It may not be 100%, but the closest.
None.
Not even Pink?
None. That's not how it happens. It's never theatrical. It's never like that. Lawyers argue on legal points. Okay. I would say there's this recent series which I've been watching. Mamla Legal Hai.
Acha, yeah.
So it kind of shows...
really? But that was a satire?
It is. That kind of shows the reality. Kind of.
Acha.
And it's kind of fair. I mean, it's well researched. Also, I'm not being able to exactly recollect the name. This Vikram Solanki, the Asaram Bapu case, which was shown. एक बंदा काफी है.
Okay.
एक बंदा काफी है by Mr. Vajpayee. What's his? Manoj Vajpayee. Manoj Vajpayee. Outstanding as a legal movie or a series. I think it was a series.
I think it was a series, yeah. I'm not too sure either.
I'm forgetting because I watched it quite some time back. Manoj Vajpayee's portrayal of Vikram Solanki, the protagonist in this, was outstanding. I think that was a very well researched film, and it shows legal proceedings as they are.
Okay.
Quite real. We'll
have to go back and watch it again.
Yes, it's wonderful. And life in India as a lawyer is not like Suits.
It's not.
It's not. Trust me, it's not. There's no Harvey Specter or Mike for that matter. It doesn't happen that way.
Right. So coming to Mamla Legal, so our district courts or our sessions court, are they actually very close to what they showed? Because that is based out of Patparganj in Delhi. So there monkeys aa jate hain, and then
those are theatrical representations.
But
I would be inclined to believe that these things don't happen. But district courts, the situation is, I would say, it's overburdened, overworked. And it's a struggle. It's a struggle to be a practitioner there because the fee that you can charge is much lower.
Right.
So I often wonder how people make a living, and then there are lawyers who are doing very well.
Right.
Brilliantly well.
So this profession is often associated with one of the most highest
it's not.
Profession. Is it true?
Not. The reality is very different. You are looking at the likes of Mr. Sibal or Dr. Abhishek Manu Singhvi or Mr. Ravi Shankar Prasad. I am naming 3 lawyers. Imagine how many lawyers get into the system every year.
So if I have to ask you, like, say a lawyer who's in the lowest rung in terms of earning, what would they earn every month versus someone who's at the top of their game? Just a ballpark. I know you cannot be accurate in this.
See, I would say somewhere between 20,000-25,000 is what they earn.
That's the lowest.
That's the lowest. Or lowest is, it can go below 15,000 or even 10,000 for that matter.
Oh, wow.
Absolutely in the initial years. It can happen that way.
Right.
If not nothing. Okay.
That's also a probability.
That's a probability. Definitely. You do not expect clients to come to you on day one.
Right.
What do you do? So, you have to have some kind of support if you want to be in the field of litigation. Right. But if you want to go in for jobs, 10, 15,000, 20,000. So I'll put a range between, say, 10,000 and 25,000. I am aware of full-fledged lawyers getting 5,000, 6,000 rupees a month. I am aware of this.
That's the stipend or salary?
Yes. That's how shocking it is. I am aware of this. And it's a sad situation. But when you are looking at the top, there's no limit. There are lawyers who are charging 5 lakh rupees per appearance.
Wow.
There are lawyers who are charging 15 lakh rupees per appearance. So that happens. And some would say that maybe it's too much of money. I would argue no. They have gone through these struggles. Absolutely. And therefore they're entitled to. And I've had the privilege of assisting or being a part of matters where such seniors exist in that matter. I'm not naming them. And I have come to the conclusion that they deserve every penny. It's not a matter of joke to be where they are. So we are always looking up to these people. That's
recently, not recently, I think PETA India, they often have their say on this about animal rights in India. They say, even I personally feel that the animal rights are very draconian in terms of, I'm not saying the wild animals. Say, for example, today, if you kill a dog, you are supposed to pay a 50 rupees fine and you come out.
I think that has been revised to something. Yes, but
has it been revised? And if yes, then
it's up to the discretion of the courts, actually. And see, I am not an expert to answer this question because that's not my area of practice at all.
I know that, yeah.
So it would be unwise for me to comment on these issues. But I can tell you that the IPC, which we have, or the CRPC, or most of these laws are legislations which have been passed in the British era.
Correct. Yes.
That is precisely why you still have sedition provisions. Right. So the laws are amended; they change with time. Some provisions change, some have remained as they were, and that is where the discrepancy arises. So beyond this, I'm not qualified to speak because this is per se not my area of practice. So that's how it is.
And a funny thing, so we've often heard कि ये 420 है. We've watched Chachi 420. A lot of us have watched it. So I think many people don't know the origin of 420. So
IPC section 420. So it's a section on cheating. And that's from where this duplicity of character comes in. And that's why you're called your 420 or that's from where it comes.
But I'm sure not many people actually knew that it came from IPC 420. So.
Right. So it's actually a section which exists. But then, interestingly, some parliamentarian in the floor of the House, while talking about the new criminal laws, the BNS, the BNSS, and the Evidence Act, which is coming in, the Sakshya Adhiniyam is what they're calling it.
Yeah. Yes.
So
yes, I read that somewhere.
Yeah. So these laws will replace your 420.
Oh, sad. We can't remember that anymore.
It'll not be there anymore.
So I have 3-4 situations. Okay. This is for the general public.
Right.
So suppose an unmarried couple and they are making out or they're having sex in a hotel. Okay. And cops barge in.
Okay. Unmarried.
Unmarried, yeah.
Okay.
And cops barge in.
Okay.
And they want to fine them or arrest them. Is it possible?
No, they can't. Because they are in private. They are two consenting adults. Hotels, if I'm not mistaken, they are required to have valid government IDs.
Yeah.
When you check in. So they have taken compliant with the law.
Okay.
What they are doing inside the hotel room is their private life. So there's nothing that a policeman can do about it.
Right.
Yet we have situations where moral policing comes in. These people, they threaten to call up
the parents and all of that. Yeah.
So this is unlawful. And the police authorities do not have the right to do so. Unless, of course, they have good reason to believe that there's some terrorist activity going on, or there's some criminal element to the entire thing.
Right.
Other than that, the police cannot do anything about it.
Right. Second situation would be if, again, an unmarried couple, they are making out in the car or they're kissing in the car, for example.
If it's in a public place, then that's a problem.
Okay.
Because there are provisions in the IPC which talk about decency, public morality, all that is there.
Right.
So if there's some kind of a disturbance, insofar as that is concerned, then there's a problem.
Right. Okay.
Other than that, you see, there's a very thin line between what is your private space and indulging in acts which are not in your private space.
Right.
The moment you step beyond these realms, there's a problem.
Right. And do you think, because as you said, it's a very, very thin line. And
but a clear line.
Right. So who decides this? As in
the Constitution of
course,
India.
I understand. But at that point of time, when there's the couple and there's the police,
it's an unfortunate situation. Because
the couple would say we are right, and the police would say no, you have crossed it.
And they would. That's the unfortunate part,
right,
of this entire system,
right,
where the people who are seen to be the enforcement authorities, they go beyond what is their jurisdiction.
Right.
Imagine if somebody is just strong enough to stand up and is heckled by the police, harassed by the police, and this person has the gall to just go to the court. Imagine what will happen to the policeman.
Right.
Because the act of the policeman in this particular situation which you are talking about is absolutely unlawful and unconstitutional. So there cannot be any justification whatsoever which will justify the excesses which have been committed by the police. An overreach of sorts. Right. So these are things, and again, all this will be very easily solved if we have a high legal literacy.
Right.
It's very important.
Yeah.
It's very important.
And I think the foundation of that should be done in school, right?
Absolutely. This has been, maybe what I'm about to say is controversial. But law must be a subject just like physics or chemistry or history. Elementary law must be taught in schools.
I totally agree.
Because if a child is taught that, this particular act is a crime, that fear of the law will be instilled from the very beginning. And the law will compel me not to act in a way which is unlawful.
Correct.
Or illegal. I'm not saying that you scare people with the law. But just till such point of time, your emotional maturity comes in. Till such point of time, you must have law as a deterrent.
Right.
So that this country is a different place to live in. I mean, if you spit on the road, it's an offense. How many people know it?
Very few.
So if you actually inculcate that in schools, somebody who would love to spit on the road or who would have otherwise spat on the road, he will think that, okay, the law bars me from doing it. consciously he will know that this is unlawful. This is an illegal act which I am indulging in.
That's right.
So that mental deterrent will be preset. So that is very important.
What is the one thing that you love about your job and one thing that you really hate?
There's nothing I hate about my job.
Then what do you love the most?
Maybe, yes, actually coming to, thinking about it, yes, there's one thing which I would want to see change. But what I love about it is it's an emotion for me. So I can't attribute one particular thing which I love about the profession. Every time in the morning when I get up and put on my gown and I walk into the High Court, it makes me feel very empowered. At the same time, I feel extremely humble and overawed by what I'm doing, because in a way, I feel that people who are in dire straits, they will come to me for advice, for taking up their matter before a judge. So that it's a blessing which I feel that I have. And one thing which I would like to see change in the profession is that there should be a more level playing field. Right?
And what do you mean by that?
It's very difficult for somebody who's not coming from a legal background to make it big in this profession. Of course, there are many people. You take the example of my senior, Mr. J.P. Khaitan. He has done brilliantly for himself. And that way, I don't think his father was a lawyer. You have many other examples who are first generation advocates who made it big. But then as a first generation advocate myself, I have seen that, it's a bit more difficult. But again, the silver lining in all this is that if you are good with what you do, if you are confident about your work, then this can be overcome. Right? But then if that level playing field is created or something is done about it, then I think it will be something which will be very good for the profession.
And what would your advice be to anybody who's aspiring to be a lawyer?
Think very carefully before coming into the profession. Because once you do, it's a very different profession to be in, right? So a doctor, if he goes wrong, he may kill a patient, right? And if a lawyer goes wrong, the entire functioning of a country collapses. Because you are somebody who is interpreting the law. If you suddenly start doing unethical things, right? Or you stop speaking up, you stop fighting for the rights of the people, or for that matter, our profession requires a lot of in-depth study. These days we have a lot of fake news which is peddled, a lot of misinformation doing rounds in WhatsApp. If a lawyer is required to believe in these things, then that's a problem. A lawyer has to go into the root of the problem. So it's a very different ball game to be somebody who's associated with the field of law, because it requires in-depth analysis of everything that you see. Superficial perusal of any information is something which, as a matter of habit, you have to do away with. Therefore, think 5 times before coming into the profession, but once you come into it, put in your best. So you have to be absolutely honest with the profession, and the profession will take care of you. That's what I think is what should be followed by law aspirants.
One thing which I always wanted to ask, I always used to think, and I think you would be the right person to help me clear my head. So when there's a case, there's always the right side and the wrong side, or maybe, or you will correct me. Or there may be one who's right and wrong, one who's maybe correct. And this is completely from a layman's point of view. So please do correct me if I'm wrong. So Now, and there are two advocates. So I'm sure the advocate who's defending the wrong person, I'm just putting it in a very
loosely.
So how do they convince themselves to fight for that person? And also being true to themselves.
Yeah. Very multi-layered question.
Yeah.
This will take some time.
Absolutely.
Okay. The first phrasing of your question, you've used a word called right
or wrong,
and you have used a word called wrong. If I stretch it a bit further, you can take it to morality and immorality. Correct?
Yes, absolutely.
When you are a practicing lawyer who's going into a court of law, there is nothing called right or wrong. There is nothing called moral or immoral.
Okay.
What exists is legal or illegal. Okay. Say you have a matter. Now, this profession is such, or your question is such, that you cannot categorize it into black or white.
You can't.
Now, what is immoral may not be legal.
Absolutely, yes.
Right?
Correct.
And what may be on the face of it moral may not be legal.
Correct. Totally agreed.
Although the chances of this second statement is a bit low, but there may be exceptions and there may be situations or examples which will validate my statement.
For example, adultery is legal, but it might be immoral.
Not always legal. Again, there's a nuanced argument to that. Adultery may be a ground for separation, or
it's layered. It's not that simple,
layered,
right?
And people who specialize in marital law will be more equipped to answer this question. Right. So I will not get into that. But the large point which I am trying to make is legality and illegality. When it comes, that is what you are fighting for.
Right.
Okay. Now, I may have a situation, and I'm going to give you an example of, say, a taxation matter. Okay. Say, I know that my client has not really followed the spirit of the law.
Correct.
Or the letter of the law.
Right.
Maybe some problems. In that event, or they have come to me for advice, seeking my advice as to what is to be done in that particular situation. And they want me to decide their course. If I see that on facts and on law, they do not have a good case, it is my ethical self that has to stand up and say that you're going to lose this matter. You cannot take this further because you're going to lose. Because what we lawyers are, we practicing lawyers are, we are officers of the court. Okay. So our first duty is towards the law. Our first duty is towards the court. So if I see that inherently there is some problem, it is my duty to point out either before the court of law or before my client that you do not have a case. So I am not willing to take this forward. And we do that. Or at least the chamber I come from.
They do that.
But
not everyone, I'm sure, does that.
That's up to them. That's really not my place.
No, but what is your take on it?
My take is I'm absolutely clear on this. That if I see that there is something which is not as per the spirit and letter of law, and there is no legal way, and I'm choosing my words very carefully here, there's no legal way to distinguish my act from laid down law, then I am very clear that this is against me and I'm not moving forward.
And what if your client convinces you, requests you, please Dada, please take this. Then
I'll take it up and I'll try and argue to the extent possible that this matter is distinct from laid down precedents. I'll try and say, but then I am not going to take a chance on my goodwill and mislead the court.
Exactly.
I'm not going to do that.
Because as a profession,
yes,
you will do that. you would want to. Do you feel
for
requested?
me, I'll tell you, I'm sorry to interrupt. My first objective is to retain my goodwill.
Exactly.
So if I start misleading the court, I am failing in my duty as an officer of the court.
Right.
So my duty is not towards anybody else but the law.
Right.
The law takes precedence over anything else.
Right.
So if you are from the media, you're somebody who's intrinsically connected with this world, you would recollect that there is a beautiful series on Netflix. It has polarized opinions, of course, but it's a very engaging one. The Crown.
Right.
So in the first or the second, I think in the first season, when the Queen's husband, the Queen is just appointed, the Queen's husband wants to accompany the Queen, and the Queen steps out from the aircraft, the Secretary of the Queen steps in and says that the Crown shall take precedence. Similarly, in our case, the law shall take precedence over everything else. My duty towards the law comes first. And there is nothing that comes in the way. I have very high standards for this because I've watched my senior do this day in, day out. I have seen him submit in a court of law if something is, if say that particular point has been decided against the party he's representing in some other matter, a similar point, then he'll be the first person to stand up and point out that, my lord, this is covered against me. So I follow that practice and I encourage my interns or juniors to follow that. And I personally follow that to the T. Right. I cannot enforce my views on somebody else.
Right.
I cannot expect the same ethical standards
to be followed
be followed by others.
Yeah.
But then I would not flinch from that standard.
Right.
Because my training has been such.
Right.
If I would have seen something else, then maybe I would have been in a position to tell you or give you a different answer.
Right. I'm sure.
But what I have seen is what I'm telling you.
Right.
And I've often heard judges remark that you are an officer of the court. Don't forget that. So in the course of hearing, I've heard this. And there's a wonderful saying in our court jargon or in the courtrooms that, and I've heard, I was talking about Justice Shwanji Banerjee. He used to say in court that justice should not just be done. It has to be seen to be done. So these are very high standards of morality that we set for ourselves. And that is where morality comes in perhaps. But not when you are adjudicating on a case.
Right.
May seem contradictory on the face of it, but it is not. When you think deeply, you will realize that your duty first is that of an officer of the court and nothing else.
And I can only hope that most lawyers think like you, because this is how it should be thought of. But I think personally,
it's a very subjective issue. It
totally
varies from, and it also depends on a lot of factors. I'll give you a cricketing analogy, okay, for this. And since I'm obsessed with these disciplines like many other Indians, you see Sachin Tendulkar or Adam Gilchrist, they would walk.
I know. Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
But then imagine a cricketer who's just making his debut in a particular match. He knows that if I don't score well, I'll be dropped in the next game. What does he do? That's an ethical dilemma. That only the circumstances or the risk-taking ability of that person will decide or will determine. So how do you expect somebody to have the same benchmark? I mean, you cannot expect every batsman to just walk. Agreed. And now with the DRS and all that, people have to walk.
Otherwise, but still people don't walk. So
And again, there is another side to this argument also, that it's the job of the umpire to declare me out. So that's what it is.
So before we end today's podcast, on a lighter note, have you ever witnessed something or someone like Sunny Deol who's gone up to say तारीख पे तारीख मिलती रही मिलॉर्ड बस इंसाफ नहीं मिला in front of you.
Every day.
ऐसा होता रहता है.
हाँ.
किसी ने सनी पाजी का डायलॉग यूज किया? No. That hasn't happened. Okay.
Maybe in jest, somebody may have, but I am not aware. I have not seen it. You asked me earlier that what is it like, right? So whether it is very close to what is shown on films or cinema, I would say that it's a much better space in the actual scenario.
Right.
Because that kind of drama, that kind of fighting doesn't happen.
Right.
So people say my other side. Okay.
Do you hate your other side?
No, never.
You don't?
We are great friends. It's always like that.
Is that an honest answer?
Absolutely. Brutally honest.
Okay.
I cannot be more honest than this. Because I was coming to that. I'll give you an example. We may fight tooth and nail inside the courtroom. We may go after each other. We may be very harsh in our submissions. But the moment I step outside the courtroom, we will go and have tea together.
With no animosity.
Nothing. You see, that is where you have to segregate your personal feelings from your professional ones. This is my profession. I have to fight for my client. Imagine my situation. The person I'm arguing with, we are great friends. We have tea together. We have food together. There are people who I have shared my lunch with. So why should I screw up if I'm allowed to use this expression, why should I screw up my relationship with that person on account of no reason whatsoever? I mean, you can always counter argue that you're fighting a case for somebody. Isn't that conflict of interest? No, it isn't. Because if I would have failed in my job, if there would have been a compromise, if there would have been an understanding between the two, then you can raise questions. But till such point of time, I am adhering to my professional practice, ethical standards, all that. There's no problem. Why should I fight with a friend of mine because he's just giving a different interpretation of the law? So awesome. Law is very subjective. It's all about interpretation. Like I said, that there's nothing called right or wrong. And now what is legal and what is illegal is a question that only the judge can answer based on your arguments and submissions. Right. So it's a multi-layered, checkered profession to be in. And it takes a real mental toll to be in such a complicated environment.
And how do you detach yourself from it when you're back home?
Ideally, you should not detach yourself from it. You should thrive in it. You should enjoy it. The moment you stop enjoying it, choose something else to do. Because if you don't get up in the morning and look forward to going to court and arguing, fighting for the people, then there's no point. And there is a lot of stress. There are a lot of adjustments which are needed from your family, because there's nothing called a personal life.
Exactly. I was just about to come to that.
Or a
Suppose
social
you've gone
life.
for a family dinner. Are you thinking about your cases that are happening?
We try and compartmentalize, but it's not always so easy. It's easier said than done. Let's put it that way. And a lot of adjustment needs to be made by the family members, because it's a 24/7 job. I'll be very honest. Few days back, a very prominent economist made a statement that judges take holidays. This legal profession goes off twice a year on holidays. So we start our day at 10:30 in the morning. There's a break in between, a lunch break for 45 minutes. Half of the time you're studying or preparing for your next matter. So you gobble up a sandwich or two. That's your court ends at 4:30. You take an hour's break. If you are at the junior stage, you go to your senior's chamber, work there. If you are not required to go to your senior's chamber, you sit in your own chamber and work, prepare for the next day. Working hours go up till 2 a.m., 3 a.m. in the night, sometimes even 4. I was very tensed in one of my first appearances, so I did not sleep the whole night. And I went to court next day. And if you are lucky enough to get some sleep, you get up in the morning and repeat the same routine. Only on Friday evenings, you are entitled to take an off. Because in this profession, you can't delegate and you have to toil it out. You have to struggle. You have to work very hard. And if you are unwilling to do that, then this is not the right profession. So, and at the same time, you need financial support from your family in the initial years, and you need adjustment from your family members.
Right.
I'm very fortunate that my parents, my wife, they understand that I'm in this kind of a profession and they don't expect me to attend all social gatherings. You see, social gatherings during the day. Say in Bengal, we have Annoprashan, which happens, some relatives or child is born, there's an Annoprashan in the middle of the day.
Correct.
We cannot go. Say it's on a Saturday or a Sunday. Even then we can't go. Because on Monday we have court. Sunday is not.
But then you have to sacrifice ilish and mutton and all.
No, we don't. We find our own.
We find
At least I do.
Okay.
I do. You have to find out, you have to squeeze out time for yourself. In the middle, I had completely stopped exercising. I used to play tennis very regularly. I used to play cricket when I was in college. I used to swim a lot. All that went down the drains ever since I stepped into this profession, and I've bloated like anything. But then I am now again trying to squeeze out that half an hour, 1 hour for physical exercise and all that. It is a very grueling profession to be in. It's not as green as it seems from the other side. Trust you me when I'm saying this. It's a very different profession for somebody like me who was not remotely connected to the field of law. And when I came into this out of my love for English and oratory and the idealistic Sourav Chunder back then wanted to fight for the people, that ambitious, that drive, that utopian drive, if I may use that expression, that drove me into the profession. And once I came in, I realized what it takes. And it is very difficult.
Do you have thoughts about leaving it?
No, never. Because maybe if I am compelled to leave it, but then now that I've kind of found some ground beneath my feet, that thought did come earlier. That what am I doing? My colleagues are earning this much. Whereas I am not even making 1/10 of what they're doing. These thoughts come in, and these are very depressing thoughts. Trust me. It does hit you. But then when you are there, when you get past that initial few years of struggle, that thought should not come in. And it doesn't come into me. Someday, who knows what happens tomorrow?
Right.
I mean,
as of now, yeah.
As of now, suddenly if I lose my brains, what am I to do? I'll be compelled to leave this profession. But then, on considering everything to be regular, no. And see, this is the issue with lawyers. We'll always put in caveats and riders in a statement, and we'll never give you a straight answer.
Correct. Yeah. Well, on that note, thank you so much
It has been a pleasure.
Coming down and talking to us. I honestly did not know a lot of things, and today I got to know a lot of things. So I'm sure our viewers will appreciate it as much as I am doing it.
It has been a pleasure, Joydeep. It was wonderful interacting with you, and after a long time. And it reminds me of our college days.
Absolutely.
And our canteen and green benches discussions and all that.
Yes. So all the best to you.
Thank you very much. And all the best. All the best to you too.
Thank you so much, and God bless.
Thank you.
Thank you.